just try to slide all the way down, ladies. Whatever wants to get. Unless you have someone coming beside you. Okay.
No, they want us like they want us packed in like sardines. Grace puts on back there. No, I'm just trying not to get in.
Hi guys, welcome to Living Social's 918 F Street. How many of you have been here before? Few of you? Okay, welcome back. We're happy to have you. So my name is Ayana. I'm your event coordinator for the evening. This is Melissa. She's also an event coordinator. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to raise your hand and ask us. So just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. You guys have these square white bowls at your tables. You have one for every 2 people. Those are going to be for your tea bags. When you're done steeping your tea, you're going to put your tea bags into those. Please do not pour your tea into those square bowls. We're going to come around with separate containers, and you can pour your tea into those. They stain real easily. You guys also have these water canisters in front of you. Some of you have big ones, some of you have smaller ones. You're going to be sharing those, so be nice to each other, be neighborly and friendly. If you prefer to pass your cups down to have the person closest to the canister pour the water, if you'd rather get up and walk around, you're free to do whatever is comfortable for you. They do run out of water, so when they do run out, just raise your hand, let us know, and we will come to you. Please don't attempt to refill the hot water. People have gotten burned before, so just let us know and we'll do it for you. So, welcome to tea tasting. You guys will be making and tasting 5 different teas tonight. Our capital T representatives here will be taking you through each step of the process of making tea, and they'll be giving you a lot of information about the tea. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. Peter and his wife, Manel.
Not me.
Started Capital Teas. They started Capital Teas in 2007. The company is spread all over the DMV area. They have locations in Gaithersburg, Bethesda, National Harbor. They can talk to you a little bit more about that later, so please give them a warm welcome.
Thank you everybody for coming out tonight, and we hope that even though it's dreary outside, it's going to be warm and great in here. Tonight is the last of our series of about 12 classes on teas around the world that we've given at Living Social. So thanks for coming. You're about the final group of 650 people that have taken this course here. And we feel privileged to be able to do this. We were approached by Living Social in March to put together a course to be able to introduce people that wanted to be tea drinkers or who are tea drinkers to teas around the world. And the objective was to be able to show you teas from different regions of the world and to show you different types of tea. So as Ayana said, we're going to be tasting and brewing 5 types of tea tonight. But since we're going to be talking first for a little bit, we have a bonus tea. And Isa will tell you about that bonus tea in a little bit, but feel free to try the bonus tea. It's an iced tea that we have while we're talking for a bit. So just a little on background, and then I'm going to turn the floor over to my colleague. My wife and I did start the company in 2007, but she's the 5th generation of her family in the tea trade. Started in the 1890s with her great-great-grandfather, who planted some of the first tea estates on Ceylon, which is now Sri Lanka. And today we import tea directly from the tea estate that my wife's great-great-grandfather planted. We make a number of blends with that. We also import teas from about 18 other different countries and regions. I've been in a number of different fields. This is by far the funnest thing that I have done in my professional career, and it's great. I love history, and there's a lot of history in what we do as well. Iso is a manager of our National Harbor store since its inception. He's also the vice president of the company for retail operations. He's a history major from the University of Pittsburgh. He was born in Nigeria and raised in the DC area, and he's going to tell you a little bit about some of the bonus tea and a few other things.
Well, of course, like Peter said, we do source over 200 different varieties of teas from at least 18 countries around the globe. So with the task of trying to narrow down on 5 great teas to start you off on your journey of teas, you can understand how difficult it is, but hopefully you'll find that this mini journey will be a fun start on your way or continuous on your wonderful journey of teas. In front of you, you'll find this wonderful iced tea. Now, 80% of the tea drink in America is iced. So we wanted to start you off the right way, or the way that you know best, okay? So this iced Sencha. It's a cherry blossom rose Sencha green tea. Of course, we just finished our cherry blossom season, which starts off the official tourism time here in Washington, D.C. In Japan, where our cherry blossoms originate, it's supposed to also be the celebration of not just spring, but of the birth of the Buddha. So we start this journey off with this wonderful cherry blossom tea. Yes, it is a Chinese Sencha green tea, and we'll talk a little bit about Sencha later as we go more in depth about tea. But it is flavored with Japanese Kyoto cherries and rose petals. Naturally unsweetened, so hopefully you'll find that it's delicious just as it is, the wonderful sweet natures of the cherries and the grassy notes. Hopefully you're enjoying it. As we go along, we have 5 other great teas that you'll find in this bag before you. Also in front of your table, you'll find a mini sheet. On the front of the sheet, you'll see the map of the area that we're covering today. Everyone, how many of us know where Sri Lanka is located, or Ceylon? Okay, so if you look on the map, the most southern dotted point is going to be Sri Lanka, right off the coast of India. So we'll be covering a Earl Grey, a cream Earl Grey, a nice spin on the traditional Earl Grey from Sri Lanka. We'll be doing an Indian Darjeeling black tea, it's a classic morning tea. We'll also be doing a Chinese organic slimming Tai Kuan Yin Oolong. Your farthest left point is going to be the Japanese Ginmaicha. It's the people's tea of Japan. Last but not least, we'll end off our day like any great tea day with a chamomile, something non-caffeinated and relaxing. So our chamomile is going to be coming from Egypt, the Nile Delta, and this is going to be an organic chamomile today. Okay? Those will be our 5 teas. On the back, you'll see some quick notes. Of course, we'll be going into depth a little bit more with history, but it'll give you some color coding just so you know what your cup should look like as we steep. Okay? And we'll show you how to make a perfect cup of tea. So again, welcome everybody.
So we want to start off today and say, well, first of all, how many have been to a capital T store?
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Good
Thank
to see
you. Thank you.
Awesome. Any National Harbor fans? Thank you. Appreciate you guys. All right.
Well, thank you for that. And you might know the answer to this then, but anybody chime in. The question I have for you is, where does tea come from? Does anybody know the name of the agricultural product from which tea comes?
Okay. Does anybody know what country tea is said to have originated?
China?
Correct.
China.
China.
Awesome. Okay.
So tea started in China about 4,500 years ago. And the reason that it started in China, and that there's a legend, we don't know if it's true, but that there was a king, and he boiled his water for health reasons so that it would be pure. And some of the tea leaves from a tea bush came down in the wind one day and blew into his cup. And rather than taking the tea leaves out of the cup, he let them sit there and he tried it. And it was stimulating and energizing, and he liked the taste as well. So he started brewing tea. And 4,500 years later, we can say that tea is still alive and strong. Tea became one of the important important products for trade in the ancient world. At different times in its lifespan, it's been something that people have consumed by drinking it, by eating it, and by using it as a form of currency. So it's pretty cool. As I like to tell my friends, we now work in the world's oldest legal profession. And we're happy to do so, but to answer the question, tea comes from Camellia sinensis. So Camellia sinensis is a type of plant or tree, depending on what part of the world we're in, or bush or tree, that actually produces tea leaves. And there's 2 main types. There's the kind of Camellia sinensis found in China, and that's also found in Japan. And then there's a kind of Camellia sinensis that's found in India and Sri Lanka and other parts of the world, such as Kenya. And they're slightly different. The one in China, that particular genus of the Camellia sinensis, is a shorter bush. It's got smaller leaves, and it's milder. The one in India, like in Assam, is a taller tree, bigger leaves, and it's bolder. So an English breakfast tea, which many people have heard the term English breakfast tea, but typically it's just a blend of the 2. They'll take, this type of tea, that type of tea, bring them together, and give you a nice blend of the 2 main types of tea from the 2 bushes. Now, from that one bush or tree, from Camellia sinensis, you make black tea, Green tea, white tea, oolong tea, yellow tea, pu'er tea, all come from the same leaves, and it depends what you do with the leaf after you pick them and the various processes, and we'll go through that today.
Now, the truth is, tea is the #2 most consumed beverage in the world. Can anybody tell me what it's behind? And in the world is what I'm saying. Water, of course. Now, in America, though, tea falls #6, and that's going to be behind, any guesses? Coffee, definitely. Soda, water, alcohol, beer and alcohol, and milk. Milk, exactly. And really, it's only in America that you find that we're consuming so much milk, and definitely only in America are we consuming so much coffee. Funny thing is, though, tea is said to be overtaking the sale and consumption of coffee, and so by 2017, we'll see that tea will overtake that. And it's already being shown. If you've been seeing or looking at the news lately, you see that Starbucks was acquired by Teavana, or Teavana was acquired by Starbucks. Other way around, right? Yeah. Starbucks acquired Teavana. Also, you have recently, over the past 5 or so years, the local bottling plant Honest Tea was acquired by Coca-Cola. So you can see the trend of these bigger bottlers and these caffeine producers moving over into the tea market.
And there's a reason that tea is less in the United States. Tea spread around the British Empire, and at the time of the founding of the United States, or shortly before, tea had come to the colonies. It was readily available in all American cities. But does anybody know an important event that happened?
The Boston Tea Party, exactly.
So the Boston Tea Party happened in 1773, and it was a result of the desire to protest taxes. Now, the British had put taxes on tea in order to help pay for the French and Indian War, which they had fought and helped the colonies, and they wanted us to help pay for it. Well, we didn't like that. We rebelled, and the act in Boston was pretty much an act of economic terrorism. The equivalent dollar value of the tea that was tossed overboard is about $2 million worth of tea. So pretty substantial amount of tea that was tossed overboard. This was not a small act. The other thing that ensued, though, is that because of this fervor, there was a subsequent 10-year boycott of tea. And people don't know about that part. So when there was a 10-year boycott of tea in the United States at a very formative time in our country's history, coffee becomes into prominence. And throughout the generations after that, tea has had its place as a gatherer, a tool. You know, it's certainly been that place where you go for a tea party or you have a high tea or something like that. But it had never been back to the prominence that it enjoyed before the Boston Tea Party until now. And now there's a healthy beverage surge. Everybody's into healthy beverages. There's only a couple sectors of the beverage industry that are growing. Vitamin water and tea are among them. We really feel thrilled to be in this sector and to tell you a lot about tea. And we think it not only is good for you, but it tastes great. And so we advocate drinking the tea because you like it. The fact that it has health benefits is just really a nice icing on the cake. And we'll go through some of those today. Now, one thing about tea that's different from, you guys has anyone been to a wine tasting? Okay. So tea and wine have some similarities, and that is that you want to smell them, you want to look at them, you want to taste them. It's not just about the taste. But that's where some of the similarities end. Tea is different from wine because wine is made from grapes that are harvested once per year. Tea is actually harvested multiple times per year. So when tea grows, the leaves grow and then they are plucked. So the first pick of the year, it's called a flush. The first flush, you pick 2 leaves in a bud, ideally, and you go and you manually pick these, and then they grow back. And a couple months later, you pick the second flush, and they grow back, and you pick the third flush. And there are different flushes throughout the year, and each of them changes the character of that leaf. So we're going to go through, today you'll see one of the teas that we're going to do is going to be a second flush. And we'll talk about that Darjeeling there. So I don't know that there are many agricultural products like this that are picked multiple times per year, but it's a neat way to understand tea. Another thing that's great about tea, in terms of its use, is you drink wine and it's done. If you make tea with tea leaves, it's not done. In fact, you should use the same tea leaves again. So today when we brew teas, we're going to tell you, if you want, pack them up, take them home, and use them again. Every tea that we serve today can get at least 2 infusions. Some of them can get up to 5 infusions. And you're using the same tea leaves over and over because you're not basically exhausting the tea when you brew it for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. You're basically infusing it for that time, and you can do it again. And again, we think that tea is really special in that regard.
Okay. Now, quick question. What type of tea do you think has the most caffeine?
Green tea.
Green,
Oolong.
black, oolong, okay. Black, okay. The truth of it is, all true tea, whether it be black, white, green, oolong, pu'er, which is one Dr. Oz talks about often because of its great metabolism properties, all true tea, all really have the same amount of caffeine. They all come from the same tea plant. What really determines the level of caffeine is how long these leaves are being exposed to the water, temperature and timing they're exposed to the water. Imagine how many coffee people do we have in the house, right? I know it's a forbidden term tonight, but let's make a quick comparison. So how many of you guys have done coffee in a coffee press, right? In a French press? So you know, once you have the coffee in there with the hot water and your plunger is up, right? The longer you have that plunger up, that coffee is getting more bolder and intense, right? But as soon as you plunge that down and you stop the infusion, right? Once you leave the coffee grounds out of the water, you stop the infusion and then there it is. But the longer you let it fuse with that water, it's going to get stronger, it's going to get bolder, it's going to have more pep in it. Well, the same thing with tea. Black tea is assumed to have most caffeine because it is, and oolongs sometimes, because they're exposed to water for a longer period of time, and then you use a hotter temperature of water. Now, that's going to be important to know today because these water canisters that are on your table, and we're going to start infusing in a little while, all the same temperature in the water. We couldn't help that. It's all boiling, so definitely be careful as you pour. But know that as you continue to enjoy your higher quality loose teas, where the nuances and the flavor of the leaves are important, it's going to be also important to be cognizant of how long your teas are being steeped and at what temperature of the water. So when you're dealing with your younger tea leaves, your white teas and your black and your green teas, well, it's important that your water temperature is at 175 degrees. Everybody have their thermometer today? Anybody? Nobody? Okay. Well, and when you're at home and you're dealing with your stovetop, once your water boils, or right before your water boils, right when the water starts to ripple, or like my grandmother used to say, when your water starts to talk to you a little bit, right? That's perfect. Go ahead. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. So you take your stove, you take your pot off the water, let it sit for about a minute. That'll bring it down to about 175. That's going to be perfect for your white and green teas. Okay? For your black and your oolong teas, about 195 is great. That's just about at boiling. But even still, I like to tell people, never pour boiling hot water on any of your tea leaves, whether it be black, fruit, or herbal, or tisane, or rooibos tea. You want to let your water sit for, again, about a good minute before you pour it on any of your tea leaves, just so you don't get that burnt taste right off the bat. Okay?
So a lot of people aren't familiar with this, and I see time after time people with tea bags leaving their tea bag in and then just drinking with the tea bag in. But just think of it like cooking. Have any of you been to a cooking class? You know, the amount that I know they give a bunch of them here at Living Social as well. But the important thing is how much time do you cook something? Well, how much time do you heat your tea leaves, and how long are they exposed? And we'll go through each one, but as a rule of thumb, the lighter the tea, the lower the temperature, and the less the time. The darker the tea, the higher the temperature, and the more the time. And we'll go through specifics on every one of our tins that we sell in our stores. We have a brewing chart that shows the recommended temperature and the recommended time for each tea. And we also have it on our website, so we don't want anybody to have to memorize anything. But just, you know, kind of use those rules of thumb. What happens is, some people will say, I don't like green tea, or I don't like that type of tea, and the reason is they made it bitter.
Right.
If you take a hot water and you expose it for a long time to green tea, it gets bitter.
Tastes like burnt grass.
Yeah.
It does.
If you, on the other hand, use 175 degree water, which is way off boiling, it's much cooler, and you do green tea for 2 minutes, you're going to get a very nice sweet beverage.
Like
Similar
that
to iced tea you tasted tonight, was brewed at a lower temperature for about 3 minutes and immediately iced. So what you have is a really nice sweet beverage that doesn't have any bitterness. So we're going to go through things tonight, and we're going to start with Japan, and we're going to start with the green tea. But I also want to point out the scones in front of you. So there are two types of scones on each table. There's what I call the fluffy one.
I call it the less polka dotty one.
And then the polka dotty one. So the fluffy one is a basil pepper scone. Okay, it's savory and not sweet. The polka dotted one is a currant scone, and it's sweet. Now, if you were to have a black tea, what do you think you would want to put with it? Sweet.
Sweet. Yeah.
And this becomes really a very important pairing. If you're ever going to have a tea party, if you're ever going to go to a high tea or something like that, if you're going to have sweet things, you want to have a black tea with it because it pairs well. If on the other hand you're going to have a green tea or an oolong, you're going to want to pair a savory, not sweet, scone with it. Now tonight we'll ask you to do what we tell you in terms of like the pairing, but then try the other one.
Yeah, don't eat all your scone at once.
Yeah, try the other one with it too, and taste the difference of how bad the sweet scone will taste with the green tea or the oolong versus how great it tastes with the black tea, and vice versa. And so there's some really neat pairings. It's a whole class unto itself, but it really comes down to the way that we process different tastes in our mouth. And for the purpose of this class, all we want to know is green teas, oolong teas, savory, black teas, sweet.
Now, you can always use, like Peter was saying about the information about your steep time and temperature, you can always definitely use our website as a point of information for not just this class, but as you go along your way enjoying more and more tea. And anytime you come into one of our stores, any one of our certified tea consultants can help you do any kind of pairings, whether it be with a meal or with a dessert. We do menu pairings all the time, especially holiday times. So bring your meals down. Feel free to work with one of our consultants and let them help pair your meal appropriately. But let's talk about some tea and let's start some steeping today. So again, you're going to be passing your cups back and forth. All your teas are labeled in this bag. You can go ahead and start opening that up. We have here our sniffing jars. So we have a great tea wall in our stores where we feature 120 different teas in these wonderful glass sniffing jars, which allow for any customer anytime to walk in and, if you like, by yourself, with a friend, or with any one of our consultants, open up any of the jars, give it a good shaking and a wafting, and smell the different varieties of our teas at your leisure, okay? So as we talk about the teas today, we're going to be passing around these sniffing jars so that you can see, smell, and poke your finger at your wonderful loose teas that you will be trying today, okay? So as we steep, how many of you are used to the old take the tea bag, spin it around the spoon, pull, squeeze that juice out method? Anybody know that method? Or the dunk, dunk, wobble, wobble, shake around method to get the flavor out? You know what I'm talking about. You've done it. So today we're going to show you the more perfect way to steep your tea, to try to alleviate all that extra work so you can truly relax and enjoy your cup, okay? So as we steep, I ask that you start off by first putting your tea bag in your cup and pouring the water over your tea leaves. What you'll find is that it will start an instant feng shui between your tea leaves and your cup, allowing the water to penetrate the tea leaves immediately, send the flavor to the bottom of your cup, come up and around almost like that lotus position in your yoga class, and it will make a more perfect flavor in your cup, okay? So if we follow this method, you'll find that you'll be doing a lot less dunk, dunk, wobble, wobble, shake, okay? So let's go ahead. We're going to start with the Gamaicha. That's going to be our Japanese green tea for the day. Right? If you guys pull that out your bag, go ahead and put it in your cup. We're going to steep that at 3 minutes. So as you fill, we'll start the timer, all right? And we'll do 2 sets of timing. The initial 3 minutes and then an extra minute for those who steep later.
And if you don't have Genmaicha in one of your bags, let us know and we'll get you a Genmaicha. And we'll pass out these sniffing jars so that while you're doing that, you can also smell with the, and feel free to open them up, what the Genmaicha is.
That's all right. So no, just no, have to sit in there. Don't take it out. I'm just wondering what your position is on sweetening tea, because I noticed there's no sugar.
Definitely answer. We are generally against it. What the teas taste like, and then the sweetening basically is. It affects it. And it changes. I
smell popcorn.
I've already been told that this tea smells like a rice can.
Yeah, popcorn.
Like popcorn? Okay. Like sushi?
So this is a Japanese green tea. So we talked about the same tea leaves can be made into green tea, black tea, etc. One thing that happens, and we'll get it in black tea is an oxidized version of the tea leaf. And green tea is a non-oxidized or unoxidized version of the tea leaf.
Well, Peter, what do you mean when you say oxidized?
So if you can imagine, has anyone peeled an apple? Okay, if you peel an apple and let it sit, it turns brown. Okay, if you break a tea leaf and you let it sit, it turns coppery brown, and it gets oxidized. The air affects it, and that's the oxidation process. If you were going to stop that on a tea leaf, any thoughts of how you might do it? We don't want it to oxidize, so what are you going to do to the tea leaf?
You don't break it.
Well, not breaking it is hard. I mean, because through its process, it's going to get moved around. It's going to, so it is going to break at some point.
Freeze it.
I guess you could do that, but I don't know if you would be able to then subsequently brew tea out of it. Freeze it and freeze, I guess, would be the same thing. That's not what they do. The other thing, imagine that they've been doing this for 4,500 years, so we didn't have any freezers back then.
Right.
Any other thoughts?
What's the opposite of freezing?
Heating it up.
Heating.
So heating stops the oxidation process. And there are two ways to heat a tea leaf, and they vary from two different regions. So in China, they heat the tea leaf by putting it in a wok, or they pan fire it. And if you imagine somebody sitting there, a big wok between his legs, and then spreading the tea leaves out and drying them in that process and heating them, that stops the oxidation process. In Japan, they steam them. So there's a difference between the way a Japanese tea leaf tastes and a Chinese tea leaf tastes that's green. So in the first group you can take your tea bag out if you were in the first group, and we'll put another minute on. In Japan, they steam them, so it's grassier, more vegetal, and it's a brighter tea leaf because it's been steamed, it hasn't been roasted. So you get a difference in color, you get a difference in taste. Now in Japan, the process is expensive. Labor is expensive, and acreage is expensive, so tea is expensive. To make the tea go further, one of the things they did in Japan, and they did it in this particular tea, is to add brown rice to the tea. And that's how you get genmai cha, which actually translates to a green tea with rice. So genmai cha has rice in it, and sometimes that rice pops in the process, calling it popcorn tea. It's also called the people's tea because it was made less expensive by putting rice in it. But it also has some other great characteristics by putting rice in it. By putting rice in it, we can use slightly hotter water. Iso mentioned that we have to use the same hot water tonight for different teas. Well, we chose genmaicha because it's much easier not to burn genmaicha because it's made more resilient because the brown rice is in it. The other thing is that it's very, very popular. It's popular. Anybody thought? Go ahead and taste it, and tell me what you think this would pair well with food-wise.
Sushi.
Exactly right, sushi.
It's one of the classic teas served in a sushi restaurant.
So it's great with sushi. It's great with seafood. It's great with Asian foods. One question that was asked to me while we were brewing was, what's our concept on sweetener? Because you won't find any sugar or sweeteners on the table in front of you. And our concept is simple. We want you to try it first with nothing in it, because you'll get the real taste. If you find that your palate wants to add a sweetener later on, by all means, that's your choice. We don't advocate that you start that way. We advocate that you start by trying the beverage as it is without any sweetener in it. We also, when we get to black tea, we'll talk, the British put milk in black tea. We don't advocate that either. But since we're on that topic of adding things to tea, does anybody know why people put milk in tea?